Hey guys, Zomfox here, and today it's time for my Week 4 game picks for the 2025 UFL season. This past weekend was the best overall week of football we've had all season. Compared to how Week 1 and 2 was, even though we had the really bad Renegade Stallions game, the other three games were all very fun games and were very close games. Even though the final score of the DC one wasn't, it really was a close game. Overall, great week of football. Now, this upcoming week is a couple really big matchups in the sense that there's basically two teams, though while not officially, we all kind of agree that if they lose this week, they are all but a formality eliminated from the playoffs, as well as another really big matchup between two teams that's going to be very telling on who is probably going to make the playoffs and who's probably going to miss it. So let's just get looking into the first two games of this weekend. Now, I will be doing a live play-by-play for both of these games, the Showboats-Panthers, the Friday Night Football game going on today at 8 p.m. EST, and the game tomorrow on Saturday between the Battlehawks and the Renegades. Now, the Showboats-Panthers, this is a big one. Of course, Ken Wisenhunt is no longer the head coach of this team. They got a new offensive coordinator. They did fully make Jim Turner the fully official, interim head coach, obviously. Over-under is 35.5. The spread is 7.5-point favorites, of course, for Michigan. This might change closer to when the game actually, kicks off and when this video gets posted. I wouldn't be shocked if this ends up getting a bit closer. Though Memphis seems to be a very underrated team, despite the fact they are 0-3. A lot of people think that San Antonio is better than them because San Antonio had one decent week. The way San Antonio played against Michigan this past week was how Memphis has played all 3 weeks. So it's hard to look at San Antonio and be like, yeah, they're a better team than Memphis. With that being said, though, Memphis' biggest issue is that they still don't have a legit quarterback because both their QBs are turnover prone when they do play. They will play solid football and will look like good quarterbacks, and then you'll make like two bad plays and make you realize, or remember is a better way to put it, oh yeah, that's why they're not full-time starters to most people. And that's why a guy like me said they had a weak quarterback room heading into this season because of the fact that we know all their quarterbacks are kind of on that like third tier level of starters. So we've been seeing that because with a better quarterback room or just a better starting quarterback, this team is probably 3-0. As for this game against the Panthers ended up playing their overall best week of offensive football this past week. Again, even though they have a couple big injuries, so far it's looking better. It looks like they might have found a new running back to, replace Colburn. Perkins actually was running the football. I think the Panthers do end up winning this game, and they win it 24-17. I think this is a more relatively higher scoring game, mainly because of the fact that, again, the Panthers do still have a couple big injuries. Of course, Breland Speaks still on IR, so big blow to that defense right there with him being hurt. As to the Showboats, I think they put up basically the same points they did last week. They literally put up like 17 last week. They're going to do the same thing here. They keep every game close. I think that when the spread is anything over 6, really 5.5, it's pretty hard to not take Memphis there. Again, I'm not saying you should bet. Again, these are not my betting picks. These are my game picks compared to the betting picks. But I will say that Memphis, so far this season, has kept every game very close, with the only exception being the pick 6 they threw against the Panthers in Week 1, which just so happened to be the week that Jim Turner was the interim head coach for when Wisenhunt was out. So yes, this is the second time Jim Turner is going against the Panthers. I just think that at the end of the day, the Panthers are a better team. I think everybody pretty much agrees with that one. It's pretty hard to argue that, so I'm going to go with the Panthers winning this 24-17. They like to go for one a lot, so I wouldn't be shocked if they continue that trend, go for one a couple times, then either get 3 touchdowns, 3 one-point conversions, then a field goal, or, a couple other things. Because kicking-wise, not a great team, special teams-wise, even though they just did have special teams play of the week, but that's that one. Battlehawks Renegades. This is the most important game of the week. Because, of course, these are two teams that both had really tough losses this past weekend. Arlington's overall game, one of the biggest choke jobs, one of the most just awful games for a team, one of the most embarrassing losses in not even just UFL, but ultra-modern spring football history, the Renegades losing that game to Birmingham. As for St. Louis, they went in with all this hype. They were huge favorites. I said at the time it was insane that they were 7-point favorites. And, man, they get proven that it was insane because Manny Wilkins looked bad. This game is going to be very telling on if Manny's going to be the quarterback. I truly believe if he has one bad first half, he's getting the bench and we might not see him start or even play quarterback for potentially the rest of the year. As for the Renegades, they need a rebound. Now, overall, the spread is very close, 1.5-point spread. The favorites are St. Louis, even though this game is in Arlington. The over-under is 39.5. Even though it would be better for the league in some aspects to have Arlington win because it would help make Arlington's home crowd even better, because we all know St. Louis is still going to be great. The bottom line is I think St. Louis pulls this one off. They have more to lose in this scenario. They just announced that the championship game is going to be in St. Louis, and they lost in that same game. Manny Wilkins looked really bad. If you're Manny Wilkins, you know if you play one more bad half, It means that all the good you did in the first 2 weeks of the season legit mean nothing because they were against the two teams that, for the first 2 weeks, were the worst two teams in the league. So that means nothing, and if you eliminate those two games, you overall have not really been a good quarterback. He knows that. He's going to play better this week against Arlington, even though Arlington did just get Taco Charlton. Will he start? Will he play? We'll see. Great addition to them. I think this ends up being a lower scoring game, 20-17, but I do think that St. Louis pulls this one off just barely. I just think that they have a bit more to lose in this scenario. Losing this game really hurts them, and it makes it a much tougher journey to make the playoffs, even though they'll only be one game behind. Because the tiebreaker, it's 1.5, so going to St. Louis to pull this one off. Now, as for the Sunday or the second Saturday game, again, one of the two games going against WrestleMania is going to be the Stallions Roughnecks, and then the Sunday game at 5 is going to be the Brahmas Defenders. Stallions Roughnecks. Let me just say this way. Both of these games I could see going either way. I really could. Both of these games are primed for an upset. Houston, historically, again, 2 of the past 3 seasons, they've pulled off an upset over Birmingham. They did it in 2022. They beat the unbeaten Stallions in Week 9. Then in 2023, they pulled off an upset during the season. Now, last year, they didn't pull it off, but I do think they make this a close game, but Birmingham pulls it off 22-18. 7.5-point spread is a pretty big number. I think that Houston's going to look even better with Henderson as the full-time starter, having been getting the real starter reps. Marcus Sims will be more integrated with the offense. So their offense stays the same against a better overall defense, most people would agree on. So they end up putting up 18 again, but Birmingham ends up having their best overall offensive performance, all things considered, because even though they put up decent amount of points against Panthers, a lot of that was return game. I think they have their best offensive performance, though it's still not a great one. They do enough to put up 22 points. This Houston defense is a weaker unit in the league. Again, Memphis just put up multiple really great drives against them, so there's a bit of a blueprint on how to beat them. I think this game does hit the over. Again, these over-unders about 35 to like 36 are really tough to call, but I do think they hit the over, barely scoring 40 points total. But Birmingham, again, it's just a matter of they're a better team than Houston. They're going to get the job done. Birmingham wins this game to try and solidify themselves as one of the playoff teams in the USL Conference. San Antonio, DC, 7-point favorites are DC at the moment. Over-under is 38.5. Wade Phillips is officially away for at least this game as head coach, barring some last-second change. So Party is the full interim coach. They did bring in a couple other guys. They brought in Cody Latimer. They brought in another guy. This is a tough one to call. DC did just lose Ty Scott, who was by far their best offensive player. No disrespect to Chris Rowland, but their best offensive player was Ty Scott, and he's out for maybe the whole year, probably. He might come back in. At the minimum 5 games he's going to miss. So he's gone. The offense still has not looked good pretty much at all this season. They pretty much have one big play a game, and that's it. They're a volume team because of how many takeaways their defense gets, not because of how good their offense is. And San Antonio had their best game last week, and they have an even better one this week. They pull off the upset 17-15 in a very low-scoring game. I've said it all the time this season. A low-scoring game, either team can win. This is going to be the case that San Antonio pulls it off. Again, how much does it matter? San Antonio needs this win. They lose this game, they're basically eliminated from the playoffs. Because the worst team in their conference after this week is going to be 2-2. That's not them. If you're 0-4 and they're 2-2 and that's your second worst team, then you have 3-1 and 4-0, you're screwed. Let's call it like it is. You're basically screwed. Because the worst record we've seen make the playoffs in this era of spring football is 4-6. So you would have to not only finish the season going 4-2, but you'd have to hope that 1 or 2 teams above you do even worse, do 1-4 or something, or 1-5. That's asking for too much. San Antonio needs this win, they pull it off. This team, again, the biggest issue for DC in this matchup is the turnover battle. DC is only winning these games because their defense is able to get so many turnovers. They're the best team in the league when it comes to turnover differential. They're averaging +2 every game, despite Teamu throwing interceptions. But Kellen Mond, for how much he's not been great, he's not a turnover-prone quarterback. The Brahmas as a whole only have 1 turnover on the season. I think they'll double that. They'll add 1 this game, but they're not going to add enough to allow the DC offense to do something. Again, Teamu has not been a good quarterback. Despite what some Twitter heads will try and make you believe, this team is winning in spite of Teamu. Teamu is a sub-50 completion percentage. His stats are only good in the yards, touchdowns, because they just throw the ball so damn much. Even Abram Smith, he still has shown flashes, but through 3 weeks, he is not a great running back, despite the O-line being improved from last year. This past week, he had 20-plus carries for barely 50 yards. That's a really bad stat line. They get a lot of plays off because their defense gets so many turnovers. If you're averaging 2 extra drives a game, yeah, your cumulative stats are going to look good because you're just getting more plays. The loss of Ty Scott really hurts them. Their receiving core already drops passes, plus the inaccurate passes by Tayamu, which is an awful combination, right? You have receivers that barely catch, then you have a quarterback that can barely throw to him. So that's why you only have like one big play a week, because it's hard to do that. And you just lost one of your 2 best receivers in Ty Scott, who is currently your best receiver. So your offense takes a massive hit there. A couple guys are on the injury report. I mean, I would assume they're going to play, but like Abram Smith is on the injury report, and there's a couple other guys there. This is going to be a rough one. I think San Antonio does pull off this upset. I think they pull it off. They win 17-15. As for the overall record this past weekend, we went 6-6. Now, it was kind of a weird one in regards to what usually happens. We ended up going like 3-1 in the spread this week, but then went like 1-3 in the over-under. Again, it was a 6-6 week. The over-unders, we finally started to see some overs hit, but not all of them, obviously. The spread, a lot of these games were very close. And again, the spreads of these games like this season have been like +7 for a lot of them, which is just an insane spread, especially when you're usually in lower scoring games. I mean, the DC one, like I said, that one was insane. The fact that DC was like 7-point underdogs was just wild, in my opinion. Again, people think I hate DC, and even I said that was insane that they were 7-point dogs last week. And this week, I feel like there's a couple games similar to that, but overall, in terms of the record, again, this season, we're still just negative because of, obviously, the push that we had in the over-under. So we're still a little bit negative, not doing as well as we were last season. Haven't had another perfect game or perfect score prediction. Maybe we see one this week. But overall, that'll do it. This has been Zomfox. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell to be notified as soon as any videos. Think about becoming a community member for as low as 99 cents a month. You get an exclusive 6 team emojis, an exclusive members video every month. This month was my NBA and NHL playoff bracket predictions. You also get exclusive community posts and all that. You get a little badge next to your name in the comments and all that. Again, look out for the live streams. And as always, guys, have a great night.